still tripping, join us at any time, right? This little presentation is a result of a little conversation we had in DC about value investment and the master enrollment tool set that exists for COSN. And kind of a conversation about how there's these great tools out there, but maybe nobody even really knows they're there, or when the time comes and you're looking for something, it isn't at the top of your list of places to go to help make some data-informed decisions. For starters, I'll tell you I am Kevin Schwartz, the Director of Technology Services at Eames, and I've been asked to serve as co-chair for the Master Enrollment project at COSN. And that's the least important thing here, though. What's really more important to me is to know a little bit more about you so that I can maybe personalize this and tailor it a little to what you need. Because I'm not just going to stand here and do my best just to talk at you. I want to try to make it collaborative and have a chance to help you as much as possible. So if you could just briefly tell me who you are and what your role is so that I can tailor this.
Kathy Crosby, Leander ISD.
Okay.
In the last year or so started a project management team, and I'm leading that.
Good, very good. Well, so this is key for you, isn't it? Okay, thanks. Rick, we met, right?
Yes, Rick Gimmig with Benchmark for Excellence. We do benchmarking programs for K-12 schools.
Yeah. And so, as I told you, this will be kind of a light version of what you're able to really dig in and do at a deeper level. So, very good.
Alicia Matthews, and I'm with Time Warner People.
Hi, Kevin. I'm Dave Solmotion with Texas Instruments Strategy with their computer software.
And we've talked.
I think we've communicated.
We have.
Yes.
So, we talked about Fuse and how that is something we're evaluating on some of the same criteria about. Here's a $50 app for iPads. Is it worthwhile, and what are we trying to achieve with that? Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, John Arona with Judson Union School District.
Cool. Thanks. What's your role there?
Director of Desktop Services.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's a lot.
Yes.
You guys rolled out, what, 500 or 600 new computers just in the last couple of weeks, didn't you?
In the last, yep,
Yeah.
last 2 weeks.
And I'm Edie Salceda with Gartner, and as we spoke, I am here in Austin, and I know about the Eames rollout, and so I'm curious to learn and map that to some of the research and initiatives that we can share.
Very good. Very good. Joel?
Yeah, Joel McCuyer with Spring Independent School District. I'm a network administrator, manage the LAN and WAN.
Okay. Do you get involved in some of the value decisions about what to buy and what to?
Yeah, well, in terms of our network infrastructure, and also securing our network, we're in the middle of evaluating a NAC solution, so I'm involved in that process.
Okay. That's interesting. Are you applying some analysis of how much risk there is versus what the cost to implement is?
Yeah, definitely. Because rolling something like that out, there's definitely a lot of nuts and bolts to it, and but there's also can be a lot of benefit in terms of the value it gives you. Keeping your network secure, and also helping enable the bring your own device sort of initiatives.
Yeah. So we'll get into some ways you can map that into here, but this is a good example of how it's hard to do this evaluation because you're dealing with something that hasn't happened, right? You don't have an expense from loss, but you have a potential, risk there that you're trying to mitigate, and you have to sometimes do a dollar analysis, but sometimes you have to do just kind of a qualitative analysis also of how important is this to have this security, even though you can't really assign a dollar to it, as an ongoing thing. John, we met, right?
I was going to call myself a different name.
Don't be kind to the rest of the group, right? Congratulations, by the way. You've already started off on a great first presentation, and I'm sure have a whole year and future years ahead of you on this.
Henry Blair with the Copper Stove ISD. I'm the Director of Technology Services there. We're kind of doing a lot of the same things.
Okay.
Apple iPad rollout.
Okay. So we have like a 50-50 mix of vendor and supporting agencies and school districts. I hope this is beneficial for everybody. This is not, I'll warn you in advance, this is not going to be a drill down, and I'll walk you through how to click the buttons in the different spreadsheets. You guys can do that, okay? My main goal with this is to sort of build a mindset around value with this and to show you how it can play out in your district in different ways. Because sometimes the right thing to do is to walk in with a spreadsheet that says, see it cost less. But other times it's much more important to know your audience and know where their fears and their concerns are and to be able to anticipate that and address it with data, okay? But you don't necessarily throw all the data at them. You might want to target that. So we'll kind of get into some of that too. A lot of what I talk about is going to be drawn from our recent experience with our LEAP program, which was learning, engaging through access and personalization, also known as the iPad initiative in our district. But this was not a build it all up and make one presentation. By the time we're done with this one-to-one, it will be 2 years of constant convincing and constant reanalysis of the project and its progress and its potential. I'm stuck on keywords lately. I really watch that. But it is about personalization. There's another keyword for us, and we think that's just the key for learning is when you can make it personalized. And so that gets us back into not so much about dollars again, but about qualitative kind of the thing that we're trying to measure. So how do we make that quantitative? I ask you a question here about how, for those of you in the school districts who are my primary audience I'm trying to reach with this, is how does your superintendent perceive you? Because this also affects how you want to approach decisions you're trying to convince someone how to do it. Sean Casey is a good friend of mine, sat and talked at Hayway Restaurant the other day about this, and every CTO or network administrator is perceived by their supervisor or superintendent a little differently. To some, you're the guy that says, hey, something horrible is going to happen if we don't fix this, right? You're just pointing out the sky is falling, there's a problem. It may or may not be realistic, but that's the only time they really have their attention is when you're pointing out a real risk to them, okay? Other times, you might be the magician, okay? And you're the hero that comes in, or they only hear from you when good things happen, and they really don't want to hear from you about anything else. Just tell me the good news so I can take that to the board and tell them how wonderful we are, right? And this was the moment of clarity for Sean and I when he said, and that's if you're lucky, okay? He said, because you might be this guy. They just don't want to hear from you at all, right? They just want it to work. They want it to be utility. They want it to be like the M&O guy who makes the air conditioning run. Just make that run and don't have it be a problem and get out of my way. We've got learning to do, okay? And so you need to know where you're at with that and be realistic about how you are perceived by others. But more importantly, you want to get here, right? You want to be the guy that can be at the center of these decisions, be there at the start of it, and be help involve and leverage things to further learning goals. And I've been successful with this in my district by being in the curriculum department. And so when I talk about the LEAP program, so I was there and I was a trusted advisor when we went to Cupertino, and the decision occurred in Cupertino at a table. And the principal said, I want these for every high school kid. And this assistant superintendent said, I see all the potential, but I have no idea. I'm so frustrated because I don't think we can do it. And I flipped over a piece of paper and started, telling him, look, we can do it. If we do this, this, and this, we can enable this. Because we were all bought into the concept of the iPads, but the how do you do it part was where they turned to me. So some of it happened without having a chance to go out the web and do a big spreadsheet or whatever, but I had the mindset, to be adaptable and to figure out how we can take technology and enable learning. You don't want to be the technologist that's telling people how you can't learn, how you can't create a certain set of things. So, Mastering the Moment is the current tag for all the set of tools on COSN's site. I think that's going to get renamed. They had several separate projects from VOI, TCO, and green computing and so forth that they bundled into this one concept. But I'm not sure the name is perfect. I do like the name, so I kind of keep it in my slideshow for a little bit. And this is that site. You'll find that they have just a wealth of information for MTM that breaks down into the different categories. I'll kind of walk through those a little bit. TCO is one of the first ones. Again, just going there and visiting it before you have a problem will help give you a mindset for how to approach things when the opportunity does come, because it can happen at any moment. So they have a checklist for IT operations. You think you're doing everything fine, but you can go there and kind of run through and say, wow, I haven't looked at X. This is how the places are doing it. COSN Gartner TCO tool, right? Another great tool that's there for COSN members. And then case studies. So you get, again, a good mindset for all these things. Green computing is the same way. Go there, think about it, get the mindset. Tips and resources from the district. There's certifications you can get for yourself and for your school district. So if you want the outward sign of the inner grace, this is here for you. And they have an energy use calculator as well. who in this room is facing some sort of budget issue, right? I mean, money's tight everywhere around. So I had a conversation with, who was it? I've been Ed. And I said, you know, it's amazing. Just the moment I want to do a project, I happen to have the savings available so that when I get those savings, they don't just go back in the bucket. I tie them to new projects. So we find ways that, yeah, we can do a data center upgrade, or we can do a desktop upgrade, or even a monitor upgrade was done this way, where we use the savings to pay for any project. And so having some data to back those up is really useful. I will tell you right away, this is not going to take an hour to go through this, because we're about 50% done already. Okay? But I'm going to talk about and spend time on one portion of the tool site, which was the value investment. When we talk about value investment in the concepts of this tool site, the first question you have to ask is what we alluded to, which is this a monetary decision, or is this a qualitative decision that we have to look at? Monetary ones are pretty easy. I mean, everyone gets their brains around, it costs this much, it saves this much, is it worth doing, is it not worth doing? But if it's a qualitative decision, then you've got another question. Okay, is this something that I need to score it or not score it? And scoring is a way that you can weight different aspects of what you're evaluating in terms of their importance to your district. So you may have a desire to put network security at a 5, okay? I may have it at a 3. It's just not as big a concern for my community for some reason. And so you have a way to personalize the results to what's relevant for your school district within this. So once you make those two choices, then you have the opportunity to go into the spreadsheets and start walking through the different parts of it. They give you nice reports at the end of how it works. And the very important part is also is not only do you get the opportunity to gather the data and present the data, but then you want to come back and evaluate it over time to see whether it matched up with the results. Because you want to do this again in a year or two with another project. You want to make sure your scores really were what they really were as important to you as they thought they were, or as unimportant as they were. So this is what the VOI tool looks like. It's a very nice Excel spreadsheet. We're all familiar with these. You start off by putting in some input areas in the intro section, and it gives you some definitions of what the things are. But really, for most of us, if you see, once you know the spreadsheet is here, you can just start filling in the blue sections. Okay, you don't have to be intimidated by all. Next thing you do is you pop over to the input tab, and again, you're walking through the blue sections. And one of the most valuable things about this spreadsheet, Rich Kastner and I would disagree on this, right? He thinks the spreadsheet is golden, right? I think the most important part of it is the things that lists just to think about, okay? Did you remember to consider furniture? Did you remember to consider all these different things that go into it in terms of the cost of the project? And the spreadsheet is about 3 times this long in terms of walking through each part of it. So it gives you a chance to remember to include all these values and costs in each one of your items. It also takes into account amortizing years, and those are things that you can change. So in my case, when I'm looking at this from an iPad perspective, I wasn't looking at a 5-year amortization, I was looking at a 3 and a 4-year, and I ran it both ways to see how it would work out. Some things are a longer-term amortization for sure. I'll give you an example of how I did the spreadsheet, and then took the spreadsheet and set it aside and created my own data presentations based on parts of it that I wanted to present to the board. Because in my school district, we were dealing with bond issues, we were dealing with interest rates, life cycles and so forth. They're all very important. And do we do this or not? And so the next page on this is a cost summary. This is all, it's reflecting back to you what you put in a different way. So you get to see how much these things show, and then you get into total cost of ownership, which is showing to you. But then very nicely at the end, you get a printable TCO and ROI that will show you the different breakpoints and so forth for the project. So really, if you go back, you don't have to do that much. You have to think, okay? You have to think about these different things, and then you have to make some decisions about value on it. And spreadsheets are a little different whether you choose to do the monetary one or the scored one. If you have a scored one, then you have another column here that takes into account the weight that you want to put on these different aspects of it. Okay? So just the exercise of going through it will be insightful, but it also may give you some real, wow, I didn't really realize there was that much savings, or wow, what I thought was savings really doesn't pay off over time. It seems like it does, but it doesn't. It'll help you make a data-informed decision. I have a teacher in college that his rule in class was if I say something 3 times, you can expect it to be on a test, right? You've heard me say it twice now, data-informed decisions, okay? A lot of the buzzword out there is data-driven decisions, even within COSN, that's a term. The decision is driven by the data. I completely disagree. I think you use data to make an informed decision because you have to shape that to a context which is going to be unique at each business or school district where you're at. But having the data is very valuable. Being informed is great. You don't want to make decisions blind, but I don't believe in data-driven decisions.
Kevin, the value things that it shows on there tend to be around time, maybe your time savings or cost savings, that kind of thing. Anything in the student learning realm?
So obviously what I put in the slideshow was the monetary one and the time one. If you look at the other side, you can do, it's the qualitative issues. Probably should have thrown a few of those up there. But yeah, student learning and so forth. So what do you measure on this? Have the ability to adapt it a little bit, but again, the weighting for the different parts will let you assign. We talk about student hours is one way to measure this, right? So learning is important. Different parts of learning are more important than others. Maybe have more emphasis on tax score, less emphasis on something else, and vice versa. But the result may not be a dollars output; it may be a student hours output. Okay, and that's what I use when we're talking about iPads. I'll come to the slide. How quickly? Let's skip ahead to the slide on that one. We did this as a value investment slide. This is the actual slide I took to my school board. We're comparing buying laptop computers to tablet computers, okay? And so the piece of data that I relied on was the student hours at the end. And this is what helped us sell the whole concept. So we're dealing with a bond package at a community that is very tuned to the financial situation. They were very worried we were going to buy a short-term device and finance it over 30 years, okay? So before we ever got to this part, we had said, look, for technology stuff, we're going to use a 7-year period of time in general for all this stuff. We're going to build some buildings, or we're going to buy some other devices that are short-term. So 7 years is what we have to amortize our purchases across. So I told them, if you buy this many laptops, this many iPads, the interest you're going to pay over time is the same for those. That doesn't change. It's the same dollar amount, the same interest rate, you're going to pay the same amount. So I put that in to show them the difference, but the quantity of devices we could buy was so different. We acknowledged the devices last a different amount of time. We took that into account when we started calculating student hours. With the laptop, we found, okay, by the time you charge them, get them, use them, and so forth, they're only really useful about 3 hours a day for the students. I think a pretty good scenario. 185 days of the school year gets to this audacious number of 3 million student hours is kind of possible for it. But then I walked them through the other side, and in particular, we get to the 6 hours per day and the asterisks, okay? So not only are they available to the students all through the school day, on a take-it-home model, we start talking about a lot more hours that are available. Okay, so this is kind of a worst-case scenario, and we're still able to show them what your $1 million, what your $1 million buys you, okay? And so I told them, I'll take, a bigger burger over here if I have to spend the same amount of money. Now, we also had to make the case, and this is part of a very substantial presentation about not just the student hours, but the quality of the learning that was going into this, and why we felt that even if you got the same amount of hours, the iPad was still better because it was more personalized, and we got into further discussions about TCO, the apps being cheaper, and so forth. All that stuff was based from the COSN work on the spreadsheets. Okay, so I want to go back a slide, and I want to talk about this slide a lot. 2011, January, is when we went to Cupertino. We had the idea that we want to do this. We see this potential in this iPad project. And then we spent a long time building our case, having conversations and so forth. And when we came back, very successful the first year, we came back and told we want to go all the way to one-to-one. We started getting resistance, okay? As long as we called it a pilot, even we did 2,000 of them, we were fine. But once we threw out the term one-to-one, I got all the pushback. And I think part of it was fear, part of it was people thinking this is inevitable, right? I can no longer say no if we commit to one-to-one. And we really, it wasn't even a majority of people that were saying it, was a vocal enough and key enough group of people that we had to sort of honor it and take a step back. And funny thing happened on the way to the forum, right? This laptop I'm using here is not the laptop I usually use, but I had this graphic on there from a previous project, and for some reason I pulled this laptop out to use it and saw that graphic and thought, oh, look at that, okay? And I realized when I looked at it how key this was to the problem that we had. So I'll walk through this little chart about technology adoption life cycle. See the bell curve, right? What it tells you is when people are most likely to adopt a piece of technology. And those of you in this room know, this is where your instructional technology folks are, right? They're the new adopters. A lot of us are over here too, just because it's cool to try it. We don't have to have it be perfect. It's good enough as it is. We want to be on the cutting edge and so forth. But notice that the big majority of people are over here, okay? This is where your families are, this is where your communities are, is in this section. So, visionary, let's just go with it, probably doesn't be perfect. People that follow the herd, they want this just to work. They want to go to Best Buy and buy it, plug it in, and have it work. So other people are, a little bit late adopters, but they're there. They see everyone's kind of going there. It's safe. Now I'm going to go. And over to the right, you have your skeptics. These are people who are very late to be convinced. They're drugged into it at the very end. Okay. What I learned when I started going to presentations with the community is that I had all these people in the room, and they were all genuinely looking at learning. Okay, but they were looking at it from a different perspective. And the problem that we had is they, the community, thought we were here. Okay? We didn't. We moved into how this will really work, and we're just trying to kind of get down the road with it. We'd already kind of mapped it all out. You'll notice what's right here is the chasm. Okay? This is where projects die, okay, that don't get adopted. Sometimes they start out and they fall flat. We're in playbook, right? It goes out, it doesn't get adopted, and it dies. And the difference between that and the iPad for us is that we got past that chasm. And so what I made the point very clear with my team is that we need to make sure people know we are here, that we are the pragmatists, okay? We're solving a problem. The problem we're solving is the district has put out a mission statement and a strategic plan, which to us are problems to be solved, and we're not comfortable, we don't sleep well at night until we've done these things, okay? So it puts us in the role of being on the other side of the chasm, okay? Now, that doesn't mean my product has to be perfect. I expect it to work, but it's not necessarily perfect and an easy plug-in solution. It'll get there, but even if it works as it is, it's valuable to me, it solves my problem. We're trying to create a 21st century digital age learning environment. Okay, well I can do that. I can get enough of these devices in to solve the access problem and address this strategic plan problem. So we saw a real shift in how we were perceived once we started presenting ourselves as pragmatists and not, hey, this is great and new, that this actually solves a problem. Because they're looking at it from this. They're looking at their money, they want their bang for their buck, they want their value out of it when they're giving tax money. So I felt like if I can tell you one thing, I can read our Sarducci and tell you the one thing to remember out of this, right, is to put yourself there when you're talking to your community. And it even was helpful for me when I went to meetings to acknowledge everyone in the room, you're the skeptic, you're the pragmatist, you're the whatever, and I realized that you're all in here. And so understand that you and I are both looking at learning and have genuine feelings about it, that we're coming from a different perspective. So that helped a ton. That just helped a ton. I went through this slide. And I'll tell you, here's a stack of resources for doing more. And I'm told that we'll be able to upload all these things. You have to take notes and be able to share them. Rich is fantastic for any questions that come up. Steve and I are both co-chairs on this, and I'm happy to answer it. If you want to look more at the COSN Institute, they've built a whole site around that slide, that technology adoption lifecycle, which I think is key. And of course, the Master in the Moment is very easy to get to from the COSN website. And then credits as well. Now, I told you that would be fast, right? What tasks do you have, and John, maybe I'll just start with you, that you're trying to dig in and work through in your district? What challenges are you having with them?
Well, I mean, we're like a lot of people facing the feeling of what to do with the pad technology and
Yep.
how to get it out there. We're facing the dilemma of modernizing our approach, if you will, to what technologies are available. We made the bold move a couple weeks ago to turn on YouTube in our school district.
Yeah.
Really stepping out there, going crazy, and got a lot of pushback from the board on that decision. We were going to stop blocking YouTube and filter and let our teachers and students have access to educational materials.
Was it based on fear of content, or was it based on like
Fear of
bandwidth?
content, fear of distraction,
Right.
that it was going to be really distracting to the student. Were it's really the two things that were voiced by the board that they were concerned about. And will the teachers, we're trying to get out of the world of being the nanny of the school district and putting that burden back on the teachers in the classroom. If a student's not doing something right, then that's a discipline issue, that's a classroom management issue, it's not a technology issue. And so shifting that mindset in our district and helping our board to make that shift. So how can we approach those things? But it gives us a bit of caution, what do we, if we, push some of the edge a little bit farther out, are we going to get, that snap back from the board on other issues? That's probably the biggest. We've done a lot of, this last year was our big year of changes. Where, so many new things came into the district, and now we're at kind of the practicing policy stage of some of that technology. But the rollout of pad technology is still working.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about the year of change. We had some of that too. We went from being 95% PC to now there's really very strong push for Macs. Okay. I'll expose my bias a little bit on this. I look at the data only, and I look at what the device does, horsepower, CPU, cost, all those things, reliability, all those things are sort of hard metrics to look at on this. It doesn't stand up, right? It just doesn't hold water for me. Why would I spend more on that when I can get everything on this? But the reason why kind of back to talking about data-informed decision is you have to factor in some of these intangibles. Like the fact that somebody wants it is powerful, right? It can be the same thing, but if they want the green one instead of the blue one, and that's going to cause them to go out and do more personal professional development or be more engaged or take the time to learn something, those things you have to factor in. And so, yeah, the year of change, sometimes change for change's sake is okay. I hate to be the only reason why we do it, but understand that people want it is valuable. And that was huge with the iPads. People didn't want the playbook. I'm sorry, people didn't want a Chromebook. We could put those out there as value items and say, look, tablet, cheaper price, whatever, 2.1 silver. It's not what they wanted. So they had to find a way to make it more compelling for them, or to find a way to leverage what they did want out of it.
So we'd really like to get to the place where we're something.
Yeah.
But we have a support fund. Whatever we buy, we're going to have to take care of. And with limited resources, that pushes us back to standardization. Just because we have to be efficient with what we do. But when you get into the BYOD world, anything's going to walk you through a wide variety of things. But one of the changes we made is moving to that virtual desktop environment where I can deliver tools to a wide variety of devices, literally manually.
Yeah.
So that was one of the big changes we made. So we're starting, that shift is starting to happen in our district, but it'll take a little while.
John, I would bet that you have a really good relationship with your superintendent, right? You're not seen as the mushroom, right?
No, I do enjoy a good relationship with our board and the superintendent, the district's leadership. I think over time, you have to build your brand, in the district and helping them see that you're valuable, that you make wise decisions, that you spend the money well, that you deliver what you say you're going to deliver. You've thought it through, you've researched it, you've tested it, and now you can deliver what you say you're going to do. do that a few times, then you really gain that trust. And you say, okay, you've got this extra block of funds, what are we gonna do? Let's build into technology.
We talk about something I can't source very well. It's ancient Greek. I'm not sure if it's Plato. Anyways, there's a concept of you have initial credibility, you have gained credibility, and you have exiting credibility. You know, so you walk into a board meeting with a ton of initial credibility because you built that up over time.
Or they're just scared of other numbers.
That's credible, right? Palpable, if nothing else. Another P word. But for someone who doesn't have that initial credibility, and you have to get to the gain credibility, right? You've got to walk into a board meeting. It's the first time you face this particular board.
But that's the value of
Having
these
the data
tools,
behind it, right?
is being able to build your case. for
Absolutely.
why, and that shows that you have thought this through.
Absolutely.
That you have worked the problem and come up with a solution. We've looked at multiple options. What is our best route? Where's the biggest payoff?
Yeah. And to go to your concept of trying to evaluate, putting a knack for this, it's very easy for people who don't currently have a problem to think there is no problem, right? Well, is my network getting assaulted today? I'm not going to give you any money to do this. But if you can start to put percentages of risk in there, what's the likelihood over 5 years that we will be attacked? And if we were attacked, what would be the cost of that? So this is, starting to put value on why we would do something like this, and it can help people move from that ignorance phase to recognizing real potential problems. And this is why we do disaster plans, right? Not because there's a tornado now, but because there might be. Hurricane, something even bigger, right? David, give me a different perspective here from TI.
I actually had a question for
Okay.
you for the next step for this. 'Cause I've met with a lot of schools around the world that have used the model, gotten to an adoption. I've been there. I left my district 2 years into a one-to-one. What next? What do you have, because you're going to be there in 2 years when you want to renew? How are you going to, what do you have to walk back in a year and a half, 2 years from now to get it reestablished to follow through the next round, since we're down to a 3 to 4 year replacement instead of hopefully a 5 to 7. What have you committed to coming back to saying, we said we're going to do this, we're going to have this value, I'm going to prove this to you?
Sure.
That next step after this, because I think this is a tool that we have that can get us to get that program started, but to redo it, and so far I haven't, most people they're putting that out of their mind, but I think schools are at your stage.
Yeah. So you have to come back to what were you originally trying to do, right? And in our case, and again, this is going to vary by school district, I wasn't trying to raise test scores. That's a very common answer people want to do, is they want to try to raise test scores. And the research that we did said that if we do a one-to-one and we don't reinvent the classroom, our test scores are likely to drop by 2%. And that's the running estimate right now. If you just introduce one-to-one, the distraction level and the change will be so vast that your actual test scores are going to slide. So we wanted to preserve test scores, right? We weren't trying to raise it. There's not enough room to appreciably measure any raising that we would do on test scores. So we focused on the 4 C's. We wanted to do communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. These are the things we wanted to improve for our kids. Okay? And we said about that, before we ever even looked at an iPad, this is something we had identified we wanted our kids to be better at. We built a graduate profile, and these are the components of that we wanted kids to exit our school system being better at. They're already well prepared for college in terms of academics and hard academics, but these are areas we felt like there was still room for growth. And so when we put these devices out there, we didn't put a high expectation on teachers that you got to use it every day. I'm not going to metric you on that, but we want you to get these in here. We want to see the collaboration change. We want the model to change for your classroom. So we started measuring, is that model changing? We go through the SAMR model. So first we're going to do substitution, then we do augmentation, then we do modification, and redefinition. And so this becomes quantifiable. You can actually go into classrooms and see how is it being used and where does something fall on this chart, and how much progress can we make here. But then back to the 4 C's, we told the students and said, okay, self-evaluate and give us evidence of how this has changed for you. We also do, some of this is anecdotal, but anecdotal is still valuable. And I spend a lot of time just being with the kids in our school and not even asking them, just watching them and seeing them come up to our juice bar, which is our service area, where they hang out. Two kids sitting side by side talking about something, right? My CFO came up and said, almost the same question you asked, how are you gonna prove this is useful, okay? Looked at two girls that were there and I said, hey, what are y'all working on? Oh, we're studying for the ACT. They've got sample questions that we can quiz each other on for the SAT. They're sitting on their own time with their, at lunch, and they're collaboratively using their iPads to do this SAT testing. I can't put that on a chart, but I can tell you every time I ask somebody about that, that's the kind of stuff that they were doing, and that was a wholesale shift from what we had seen before. So I anecdotally knew we're getting there in terms of collaboration, communication, and we're still doing what we need to do to hold the test scores up along the way.
So I was actually wondering if you were doing something that might be educating administrators or whatever to be able to evaluate the use of technology as it changes. And you brought up, Samber, like Lodi and training them in that so that they could do that, have that proof that you changed instruction.
Yeah.
And if that was going to be one of your metrics in 2 years from now to come back to the board.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great to
So
hear.
we did 11th through 12th grade to start with. We went back to the board and said, okay, now we want to do 9th through 12th for the whole high school. And that's where we sort of presented that first round of data to them. It was only about 6 months worth of captured information. We presented that back to them about how this was meeting these goals and how we really thought that not only could we extend it to their students, but that by extending it, we would get more teachers participating. Because where we saw weakness in the program was students who were only partially participating. Too many P words. Why is that like stuck on that? Partially participating. So we had students who say maybe a sophomore, okay? And they got in the program because they're taking an AP class. So all the juniors and seniors got the iPads, but then we gave them to some of the sophomores in the AP classes also. So that student would have one class where they were part of the program, but the other 5 classes, the teachers weren't participating in the pilot. And so the feedback we got from some of them was, well, I'm only using it in one class. And we mapped that back out and found out why. It's because they weren't fully participating. So the whole culture had to change. We feel like by getting all the teachers involved and invested in it, it will give an incremental boost also to the program. I mean, it's just ubiquitous. So.
Kevin, Bill Russ from Gartner yesterday was talking about, kind of a conceptual model of moving like from 16 to 1 student-teacher ratios to 25 to 1 because of much more of this, interactive kind of environment. It doesn't sound like anything like that went into any of your calculations or perceived value. But is that in your thinking? Is that where you see things heading? And is this an enabler?
Yes, it is. I think right now we're tending more towards the flipped classroom type of process where the kids can do the study at home, come to school and do the collaboration and get the questions answered kind of thing. That wasn't how we started. I think we started without the iPad as a tool in mind. And we were talking about the hybrid learning environment where kids have some period of time where they've got direct instruction, but there are times where they're pooled in maybe 300 to 1 environments, right? In large central areas with instructors milling about. And we kind of envisioned that happening in an old school way with an LMS, okay? So you have an LMS that works with the iPad, the kids can get a formative and a summative assessment, they can work at pace, with the P word, right? To get that personalized learning so they can spend more time in the areas where they need to dwell or grow and less time in areas they've already mastered and still get through it, that would be a more efficient way of doing it. What we're finding is that that's a huge thing to try to change. And that's just, buildings aren't even built for that. I mean, it's fundamental problems, right? Buildings aren't even shaped that way. So very difficult to do. But what the iPad has done subtly is sort of create that environment within the classroom. As teachers have started to adopt that salmon model and get into the higher realms of it, then you do have places where a teacher will give the students a project, hey, you 3 people do this, and that they're collaboratively working at pace through something. And so you kind of get the benefits of that hybrid environment without having to scale it to the big room of 400 people teachers knowing about. We also did it without an LMS. Now we're putting one in, I still see the value of that, but we did that without even an LMS in there. So adding the formative and summative testing and curriculum will be valuable. Where you did it the cheap way was with like the clicker type solutions, right? Where you're sort of getting that feedback in the classroom along the way. You can can do a formative, and you can do a summative, just like Dr. Butcher was talking about, where she's a master at it, right? I mean, nowhere near that, but even the low-hanging fruit, that's still really useful. Did I even get to your question? I talked.
No, I was just kind of curious where your thought process was.
Oh yeah, the hybrid, how we have to connect with the hybrid, yeah. Okay. So what else? What else can I tell you about Sheriff? Yes.
You talked about data-informed decisions, and I'm curious about how you messaged your initial, your objectives, which you said were the 4 Cs, and how did you message that to the board?
4 Cs, here they are, you know? So always valuable to go back to what the board told us. You set the mission, you set the strategic plan, here's our answer to it, right? You want these type of things, we address it with this, we see these 4 Cs as being the part that we need to fulfill, to make students, our graduate student profile complete. So then you're talking about how the iPads were there. Now, we were early adopters of it in general, but there was still information out there on one-to-one programs, other devices. We looked at TCU, who had done an Apple product. We actually brought them in, an Apple program. We actually brought them in to do some of our staff development. So there was, even though we were early, there were earlier adopters that we could draw from. Didn't have to do it all ourselves. Sure. What else?
Oh, that's another question.
Please, bring them on. We got plenty of time.
So I've been using one of these babies for about 2 years. I'm highly sold on it.
Okay.
I think it's like the ultimate reference to it. But I really wonder whether this doesn't further the STEM problems versus laptops, because they're not very good for inputting, they're not very good for, in my opinion, for doing a lot of, let's say spreadsheets or programming or hidden calculation. So I'm curious, did you, in this assessment, did anybody challenge that? I know they're sexy and they're cool and everybody wants one, and I can see how that would be very hard to overcome. But as far as people thinking about usability and, let's say, science devices or things like that, were they the device busy?
Great question. D words. Great question. Yeah. I'll put that as 4 C words. What you described, we kind of encapsulated in content creation. Okay, these are consumption devices, not content creation devices, was the thinking. My personal experience with the iPad 1 was I got one, took it, said, yeah, this is pretty cool, but I still got to carry my laptop with me. I can't do my spreadsheets, I can't do my whatevers, okay? And so I eventually handed my iPad 1 off to somebody else and said, not interested, right? I mean, it's kind of neat, but it's not for me. I've got to do real work, right? When we came to look at the iPad 2s, we had a different mindset of thinking about this as a device that really assists and integrate with students. And started looking at it from that perspective. Picked up an iPad 2 again, integrated it into my life. This is how I adopt things. I just own it, right? I found that when I treated it like an iPad, it was very successful. When I treated it like a laptop, it was terrible, okay? And so, in terms of messaging that to community, we didn't try to sell it as laptops. Now, this slide is sort of an exception to that. But in general, we didn't try to sell it as a laptop, okay? It's a learning tool. One of many. We still have laptops, desktops, Macs, PCs, clickers, everything else, all that tool set that's out there. So it's not an end-all, be-all, Swiss Army knife of everything technology, okay? What it is good at is being present, okay? And having a 10-hour battery life so that it's available when the student wants it, and turning on without a second. Okay, that's the best 3 things about the iPad. Everything else is gravy. Because when the moment is there to learn, they can do it. You can do that with a Chromebook, you can do it with anything else. But again, we sell it on the iPad. But it's for those three reasons to start with. Content creation, right? So I'm using this iPad, right? And I'm starting to really rely on it. I start realizing I don't use my laptop anymore. Because what I found is that a lot of the work that I was doing, it was work I was doing because I wasn't having as much, I was having to kind of, let me explain this. If I could deal with something the first moment that it came up, I didn't have to deal with it in a big way later with a spreadsheet, okay? If I could answer an email now, I didn't have to create a spreadsheet tomorrow, okay? And so by dealing with my work faster, I found I wasn't even doing spreadsheets that often anymore. When I did, I would sit down with a big screen, and I would, create that. And I do my PowerPoints on that. I don't like to create keynotes on an iPad, right? I could, but I still prefer tools I'm familiar with and I'm successful with. But I found I was doing that a lot less. I don't even carry my laptop around. I brought it here so I could present it. So when I treated it like it became a great tool. And then I found it actually ended up changing how I work. And so work became different than it used to be, right? I still crack open an Access database once in a while, I still do those things, but I found I was doing less and less and less of that. And we're getting a lot more to the communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and so forth. And so my best work that I did in the past year had nothing to do with spreadsheets. It was little insights into, wait a minute, pragmatism, right? The difference between critical and crucial, the leap terminology and so forth that we did was actually some of the highest level work that I did, and it had nothing to do with numbers, which is an odd comment to make in the middle of a VOI where I set of slides on spreadsheets and stuff. But it changed work. And so you talk about this addressing being something that could hamper
I guess
STEM.
what I wonder about all that though is the foundation that you came from is still there. And it now enables some of that, as opposed to never doing the foundation.
Yes. I think the jury's still out on whether that foundation is even still valid anymore, right? When you start talking about big concepts like what our role as a country in the world is, yeah, we'll probably be the first to create things. That's definitely a STEM kind of a thing. But that service industry, I'm not talking the low level, the high level service industry, the consulting, the creativity, and those kind of things, is where probably our country's role in the future is. But I want to challenge the notion of is this hamper STEM, okay? I'll start with my first gut reaction was that I've got a lot more girls interested in technology now than I ever did, right? So I've dropped a barrier for them they couldn't get past, because I've made it cool for them, okay? The STEM stuff that we're doing, probably the two most successful programs we have in our school is an AP environmental science class where they're using iPads and they're doing it real-time, real-world situations to analyze those things. Not the traditional engineering piece, but science nonetheless. And computer science classes where the kids are creating apps for the iPads. So project-based learning, very relevant to what they're doing. We can even do this whole great circle thing where the kids are creating apps that we use in the district for their own education. So that concept is important too. So. When we talked about consumerization of IT yesterday, one of the things I didn't get into with that is that I actually staffed our service bar with students from the high school as part of their mentorship program. So that opened the door for kids who had some inkling of IT, now they were exposed to it, and they actually got in there and did the service on these things. So I had 9 kids that I mentored in that manner this year. So it depends how you do it, right? If you throw it out there as a nanny device, yeah, you're gonna see an erosion of technical skills for people. But if it's just another tool that helps with their learning, it helps them in their physics class. I mean, it doesn't have to be what they're learning, it can be the tool they're using to learn STEM in a better way. I think it's very valuable there. Okay.
I was going to mention an example. Knoxville STEM Academy would be a great school to look at for how they're using things in that kind of environment. So they're a one-to-one tablet, happen to be iPad, but very focused in STEM Academy, and they're a regional focus point for the rest of the state. Took a group of people there, and I never have to bring up the concept of arguing, is it a consumption or a creation device? I have some videos of the kids and the stuff they did, and it just ended all discussion amongst the people I worked with of this device is not a creation device. It's like, here, watch this video. Watch these 10 kids and what they're doing, from spreadsheets to word processing to anything you do, and it just blows your mind with what they're able to do and create, and their conversations of how they use a desktop or laptop as a research tool, and they prefer, but as far as science and technology and engineering, getting out to so many schools, you just need to go into classrooms and watch kids. It's usually those of us who are using it as a productivity device that don't see that. But that's a really good magnet school or focus school.
Well, I think you have to figure out what your use cases are, too.
Yes.
At early in this process, who's going to be using it for what, in what situations, in what applications, and then that'll help you decide what's the right tool, because there's a lot of great tools.
Yes.
You know, that's a great tool, but it may not be the right tool for everything.
Absolutely.
But, you know, what's the right tool, what are we using it for, who's gonna be using it, when are they gonna be using it? And figure those, you know, lay that out, and that'll help give you some guidance as to, you know, what's the right thing to put into the hands.
Purposeful. Stuff on keywords.
Plan.
Yeah, plan, it's a great one, it's a great one. I wanna come back and talk about the Fuse app a little bit, because I talked to Austin Community College, they came out and visited what we were doing with the iPads, trying to figure out how they could make that, you know, solve some of their problems that they're having. One of the issues Austin Community College deals with in the STEM area is they get kids in who still need math skills to be ready to participate in college. So they've got older kids that are trying to learn, in some cases, younger level stuff. They've still got to deal with this mathematics problem. And so we talked to them about the Fuse app. Okay, the Fuse app is it's a $50 app for an iPad, so it's not a choice you make lightly, right? I'm not gonna stand here and try to explain the Fuse app, but it covers algebra and geometry and so forth. It's kind of a rich multimedia tool for it. And they looked at it as a way to solve a level math problem with iPads. They bought Highland Mall here in Austin. They built a 500-seat training lab there. And I said, well, that's a great place to pilot this kind of thing because you've got, you're pragmatic, right? You have a problem you got to solve. The iPad isn't perfect. You just got to solve a problem. You can quantify it because the dollars are there. We can look at what this is worth to you to solve this way versus solving another way. And suddenly, a $50 app looks cheap, right? And so the lights started going on for them in terms of how to do it. And I think that I'd like to see them, you know, solve that particular thing. For us, when we did the Fuse app, I had people who were way over on the left of that chart being visionary and going, this is a great app, we need to get it for all of our 8th graders, okay? And then we took a step back, my boss challenged us and said, wait a minute, let's be purposeful about this. And said, what's the instructional need? We just took the test, 100% of our kids passed the tax test, or STAR test, whatever, 100% passing rate. Why are we throwing more dollars at this and more resources at this than something else that we might do? Because again, dollars are finite. And so for a little while, the project got scrapped based on that. And the person who was in charge of the math program came back with data, okay, and said, here's the problem. The kids in grade now are fine. It's the kids that are coming into this program that I'm worried about because they have a different curriculum there, the teachers aren't as strong, and the results we're seeing from their data there aren't as strong as the previous cohort. And I don't think you're going to see that mastery there. So I want to use this to augment that and keep that test score up. I can't raise it right at 100%, we want to keep it up there. And so based on that, we're now back on track with trying to put that out there in special targeted areas where it can have the most benefit. So if I had gone data-driven, and not had all the data, it would have led me to a no. But being data-formed made us look at it again and come up with maybe a better answer. So. These are great questions. Y'all are very thoughtful. Just what else can I answer for you? You have any questions there?
What's your typical planning cycle? I mean, how long did y'all mull over the iPad decision and gather data?
Well, it depends how you want me to answer that. Like I said, it happened on the back of a napkin in Cupertino in one way. But we came back to the board and told them of our intention to look at this further in February. And by May, we had passed the bond, had the funding. A week later, we asked for a reimbursement resolution, deployed last summer. 6 months later, did our evaluation of how's the progress on this. End of the year, came back, got approval to do the rest of high school. And so when we turned and did the next one a little fast and said, by the way, we want to do K-8 also. That they went, wait, and slowed us down. So now we're doing half of that. Okay, but as I mentioned at the start of it, it will have been a 2-year process to have the vision, get the data, convince, come back, reevaluate, talk about it, do it before we're finally done in a couple of years. Yeah. And then I've got a community to convince in short order that, oh, by the way, I need another bond package, and we're going to do iPads again. Are you still with me? You know, so in some ways it's ongoing.
Did you personally do the project management or the project plan, or did you have somebody on your staff do that for you?
In terms of the IT part of it, I did that.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. I didn't say I did it great.
It's a big job.
Or go formally, but that was, yeah. And we had to innovate. I mean, we came up with things that we even made Apple sort of revise their strategies and things they're recommending because it wasn't playing out well in the real world. But yeah, we stubbed our toe a few times, no doubt. We tried to make sure that every district is thinking about here's our stories of where we stubbed our toes more than the successes, because it's the mistakes that I don't want anybody to repeat. The successes are fine, right? Yeah. It happens so fast. It's very hard to do project management because it changes so fast, right? By the time you get a project plan together, there's a new technology, there's a new way to do it.
In our case, it's more like the project's already underway, they're having trouble with that in our project management.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of getting
How do
ahead
you,
of the curve
how do you deal with that?
as best we can.
Yeah.
Usually it's a communication issue, as long as you get somebody in here to really get the communication and the risk and the assessments a little bit closer to the front. Helps.
Absolutely. That you couldn't be more clearly stated. You've got to be at the front. Whether you're the CTO that gets with the project manager, somehow you've got to know what's going on so that you can be there just in time for them.
And what I'm hoping from some of this is that we can actually look and say, do we need this project? Because I think, as almost anybody, we're doing some stuff that we don't need to be doing.
Yeah.
Where there isn't the value proposition for learning and refining.
That's probably going to be a good way to wrap this up, is to talk about that, because if you look at the COSN site, it's all posed as, here's how you can justify your project, right? And it shouldn't be that way, right? The project should be challenged, right? So that when it does get put out there to the community, it stands up and holds water, right? And when you say no, right? Look at the data. If it tells you no, look at that in context. Don't just forge ahead with that. Yeah. Yes.
How are we doing on time?
A few minutes. Let you guys get out here earlier.
Similar to the other question I asked in terms of kind of your forward thinking on digital content versus print, and how does this impact?
Well, it's huge. It's huge in the direction of digital content, no question about it. When we brought in the iPads, I didn't connect a single one of them to a printer. And for a couple of weeks, I would get the occasional, hey, I need to print this, and I would tell them, no, you don't. Find another way. That's part of your learning here, is find another way. And so, kind of had to be a little hard about that, but what they learned pretty quickly was the document that they had was more valuable digitally than it was printed. So I love that. I love that we increased the value. Of course, by the way, we cut printing costs by 22%, at the high school, which was millions of pieces of paper. And some teachers even made a game out of it, right? They would see how few pieces of paper they could print. Now, they're going to extreme because printing is still pretty cheap. I don't want people to waste time, but they were, seeing how far they could take it. You go into some classrooms, you see a QR code on the door, okay? Kids take a picture of it, and that gives them a link to their information. And some teachers even went so far as they didn't print a piece of paper, they just changed where that links to, so the kids come the next day, it's the same piece of paper, but it links to a different place. And so they use one piece of paper to, point the kids to all their lesson plans for the whole year, and it's all kept digital. They do it in PDF. Kids have tools that let them annotate PDF, collaborate, share those notes, make them richer, and it's better. It's much better digitally than printed. We've already had some initiatives to drive down printing, but this was on top of it.
What about buying textbooks?
Well, okay, so last thing on this. The textbook market is changing radically, and the traditional textbook manufacturers have got to get it right. They've got to make it affordable, they've got to provide better content, they've got to do it immediately, or the teachers are going to create all the books themselves. They've got all the tools now, and you want to talk about project-based learning and see if you know something. Kids, create your textbook. That's your project for the semester. You create the textbook. And they can do that with a combination of their Mac and their iPad and deliver it out, to all their students. Thank you all for your time and your questions. And if you have any more after this, email me, let me know, and I'll share with you what I can. Okay? Thanks.
Thanks.